So I've watched Professor Anton's response to me about the place of agency in the universe, the extent of agency's role in the universe, and I'm still thinking about it. I have inclinations here. I have uh, suppositions and ideas. I don't necessarily have certain beliefs. I think of this type of discussion as um, problematic in the sense that I approach these ideas of like agency in the universe or purpose in the universe. I approach them uh, as problematic situations, and I think into these ideas as problematic situations. So, yeah, I don't have any sort of a systematic response to the reality or not of this idea of agency or purpose in the universe. But I do have inclinations, I do have tendencies of thought, ways of thinking that I have acquired based on the books that I read, right? Um, and the experiences of thinking that I have passed through. And I think thinking isn't something we just do all the time, right? I mean, we have thoughts all the time, but thinking is something different. In the sense that thinking is a sort of agency. It's a self-reflexivity, but also it's a creative act that's only possible through a certain willful, conscious decision. Thinking occurs on purpose. Thought happens to us. Thought is habitual. Thinking is creative. So, in my own thinking, on those rare occasions that I've attained to that level of existence, right? So, I'm saying thinking is a way of being, um, as as is our normal experience of just being sort of washed over by thought. That's also a way of existing. But the point is that when we think creatively, when we approach problematic ideas in a novel way, rather than just approaching such ideas according to the common sense opinions of our particular age, the intellectual gossip of one's time and place. If we rather approach ideas as open questions, as still wild, like you're walking in the woods and there isn't a clear path drawn out yet, so you have to be the one to draw that line, to make that pathway, to lay it down in the course of your own walking. And, my inclinations when approaching this particular cluster of problematic ideas surrounding agency and purpose, they've led me to a sort of cosmological perspective, which is to say that I'm not going to be, I'm not willing to reduce biology and psychology as classes of phenomena to physics. Um, I'm not willing to say that, in some sense, what we call purpose is only an epiphenomenal side effect of um, the emergence of organic creatures out of what is largely, and at one point was, um, the only form of existence, and that's the physical. I don't conceive of the physical in an inorganic way, you could say. I grant that there are differences between physics and biology as classes of phenomena that we should respect, but that these are differences in degree ultimately. And that when we talk about the organic, or even better, when we talk about the ecological, we're not just talking about the biological. Physics is also the study of the associations of various organisms. We call them, various atomic elements, various forms of uh, stellar conglomeration, and a star isn't just a conglomeration or an aggregation of atoms. It's a new emergent uh, being that has powers that are entirely new when you compare them to the atoms that make them up. So emergence in the sense of whole new, what appear to be entirely new capacities, forms of agency, in other words, in nature, are actually continuous. But that even before you get to the biological break or apparent break, the emergence of this, again, entirely new form of organization, even this is continuous. But we're dealing with the same kind of creativity here. The same kind of creative agency is at work when atoms become stars, as is at work when seawater and sunlight and perhaps lightning gave rise to the first free living cells. The same sort of creative emergence is at work. The same sort of creative agency is at work. Now, the question now becomes, if we do admit that there is agency in the universe, not just at the biological level, not just at the human level, but the whole universe from the beginning had a sort of purpose, a sort of intelligence, a sort of agency. The question now becomes, well, what sort of agency? Are we talking about Jehovah? Are we talking about Yahweh? Are we talking about the gods and goddesses of the world's many great religious traditions? Or are we talking about a different kind of agency? Are we talking about a god like Whitehead's? Are we talking about a god like Plotinus's? Or like Descartes? There are different ways of imagining the nature of this agency. And so we shouldn't assume that when one admits that there is some sort of intelligence or agency or purpose at work in the universe, one shouldn't assume that they mean the all-powerful creator God of some interpretations of the Bible. The thing with, the thing about philosophy is that, it comes out of theology, of a network of inquiries, of paths for thinking that really doesn't make sense outside of theology, or wouldn't have been possible without thousands of years of theology. But when philosophy emerges out of theology, it does so because it begins to approach God imaginatively and creatively rather than dogmatically, rather than assuming that the revelation happened in the past for other people, and that our only access to it now is through their writing, their written record left of their own experience. The philosopher assumes that no, revelation is ongoing, it's still possible for you and I, and that, we should not be ashamed of our own thinking, though it may be heretical according to the boundaries marked out by historical texts. It is nonetheless real thought. In thinking, we become something real that we had not been prior to that thinking. So thinking is a creative act, and thinking, our own creative, artistic advance upon the thought of others and of the past, is a kind of revelation. A different kind of revelation than the revelation of historical records. But nonetheless, we ought to pay attention to it. We ought to take it seriously. We ought to take it seriously enough that it becomes the acknowledged center of human life, the real purpose of our existence, is to think, is to create through thinking, to become something new as a result of our own intelligent, good and beautiful effort and action. And I think that when human beings do that, when human beings become philosophical, what they're actually doing is tapping into the creative power of the universe itself. That we participate in a cosmic creativity when we write our poetry and our scientific theory and our spirituality. And this is a kind of writing, right? What we do when we philosophize is a kind of writing and a kind of speaking also, a kind of teaching, I guess. But it is inseparable from that form of media which we call writing. So that's interesting to think about, right? What sort of limitation does the medium of literacy, of alphabetic literacy in particular, put on our thinking? And what is YouTube doing to alter those limits? Maybe extend, maybe withdraw them, shrink them. I don't know. It's an open question.